Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Stool podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. This is episode number 21. My name is Robin Lewis from robinlewismakes.com. I'm joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks.
Hello.
And Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio.
Hi.
We live stream the recording on YouTube every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, or UTC plus 10. Or you can watch or listen to it later on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. We'll get to your comments and questions towards the end of the show, but feel free to chat amongst yourselves. The idea being that this is also a place for people to meet. So I don't have any announcements this week. Is there anything that you guys have that might be interesting that you want to talk about?
Not on my side.
Nope.
Put me on the spot.
We can get to it later in the show. I just thought there might be something of interest that we want to start with. But no.
Nothing stupendously.
Cool. Okay. Well, then in that case, before we get into the actual topic for tonight, let's do a bit of a rundown of what we all worked on this week. So, Joey, as per usual, that's your cue.
Okay. Well, this will run into the topic, I think, quite nicely. So, okay, I finished my table. Some of you may have seen the video, the extension table I did from oak and cherry.
And what a table it was. Sure.
Super duper happy with that. I thought it was interesting. Actually, we're going to talk later a little bit about failure, and I thought this was like the complete opposite for me. So I thought that was a nice win, I think, as long as they pay me. Money's due tomorrow, so hopefully that comes through.
Otherwise, it's just all a stuff up.
Yeah, otherwise I'll be chasing money and then, blah, blah, blah. That's not fun. So that was a pretty big win for the start of the week. So the bad side for me, that was for the first time ever, work has just stopped. There's nothing for me to do at the moment.
Right.
And that's not necessarily through any fault of my own, but I actually have a good 5 jobs that are meant to be. I could start any one of these jobs.
Mm.
None of those people, for whatever reason, have decided to pay their deposit invoices. So 2 of them actually are booked in, meant to be starting this week, and there's no money sitting in the account. Emails are flying. Things are happening. I'm trying to get the ball rolling. And so I think I mentioned it briefly at the start of last week's episode that things were a bit quiet and things were starting to appear like, if this money doesn't come in, there's not going to be anything to do. And well, it turned out that the money didn't come in, and things just stopped. So it gave me, so we did it. So that can be pretty stressful when you're by yourself. It's a bit more stressful. I have an employee who works half days for me. So we've done a huge amount of cleaning up and just organizing the shop, doing a whole lot of things which are going to help for working when work comes in again. But I've personally been just on the computer. I've just been quoting like you wouldn't believe, trying to get someone to say, yes, just do a job. And everyone at the moment is just like, oh yeah, can we just hold off for 3 weeks or 2 weeks before we get onto that job? So that's just been really frustrating. So finally, after all of that, this afternoon, I think about 3 jobs said, yeah, let's go ahead. So hopefully next Monday I'll be banging into some work. But at the moment, it's been a little bit stressful trying to make things happen.
Without getting into too much detail, when you said the work's not coming in no part of your own, do you find that there's a lot of active looking for work on your part, or do you just sit back and word of mouth is now working enough?
No, I definitely don't. I don't just sit back and expect work to come in. At the same time, I don't do crazy amounts of active searching for work, but I seize opportunities, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. People walk in off the street. Oh, I've got a table that needs refinishing. I'm like, yeah, I can do it. Let's do it right now.
But you're not going out and You're not going out and doing the hard sell, like,
No.
door to door. Yeah. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I do push a little bit. Like certainly when work is a bit scarce and I'm in emailing a client, I will start following up with before they reply back to me. Like if it's been a couple of days, I'll say, hey, what's going on with this? I've got an opening. I could get onto your job pretty quickly if you want to push go on it. And then that usually jogs some memories or might spark something up. They'll either say yes or no, or in this case, everyone said, oh, let's just hold off a week, which doesn't help. So it's been really annoying.
Yeah.
Also, before we move off, last week when we had Brian on the show, you were talking about those runners on the table and how the I think it was the friction you were saying was just hardening up that timber. When you were talking about
burnish it, yeah.
Burnishing, that's right, yeah. When you were talking about it at the time, I couldn't really picture what it was, but I can totally understand now, having seen the video. As that gets harder, that's just going to turn into it's such an amazing mechanical joint. But while I was watching the video, I couldn't help but think, is that friction not going to slowly crush the fibers and it's going to become a bit loose? And because that middle piece is solely reliant on the tightness of that joint, is that not going to become a bit sloppy over time?
I think, yes, it probably will be sloppy over time. In say 80 years, it's probably going to be a little bit wonky. It'll be Granddad's little wonky table a little bit. I think.
But it wouldn't get that much use being extended, surely. It'd be for the odd occasion. Yeah.
So I said to the clients, like, how often do you think you're going to want to extend this table? Because that kind of depends on the type of extension, I think, as well. And every client I've had that wants it is like, oh, only for Christmas time. So, okay, you're looking at over the table's lifetime of 100 years, it might be used 100 times. And that's nothing. So with oak especially, I'm not worried really at all. I don't think that's going to cause much of a problem. I have done one before in Kauri, and it's, I think, too soft. And unfortunately, I've got another one to do from ripping an old table apart and turning it into a new table. And I'm a little bit worried about that as well, because the Kauri is just so soft.
Yeah, you could always just
will have a problem.
Do a hardwood insert strip, so you make the dovetail way oversize. You know how you on dovetail ways on a jointed bed or on anything with a dovetail way. They always have that pressure plate. Instead of a pressure plate, just make it a hardwood runner, and then
it's not silly, because really the only part that needs to be, say, for the Kauri one, is that external rail. When it's shut, it needs to look like it's Kauri. When it's open, it doesn't matter if you see a piece of oak, because you see the mechanical joint anyway. So that's interesting. I might do that, actually.
You could also then add it as a feature that the runner is essentially then replaceable. So if down the line it does loosen up, you can replace the runner and get it tight again.
Maybe. A little bit tricky, because it will be glued to the rail, and the rails are glued into the legs. And
obviously you'd have to screw it into place. But
interesting idea.
So a bit of an up-down week for Joey.
Yeah,
Jordan.
pretty much.
Me, I am. Yeah, it's been a busy week, actually. So a lot of small jobs. I did a refinishing of a small cabinet thing, which was kind of sacrilege, because it's this really nice old thing that was destroyed by prior users painting it. So I had to whitewash it just because it was so paint damaged on the bottom. I did some stuff for my neighbors. So I've got a coffee roaster next door to my factory, and on their roaster there's a viewing window where you pull out the beans and you kind of look into it and see how roasted your beans are, and their handle caught on fire and kind of burnt off.
Roasted.
Yeah. So I managed to pull out the old lathe and turn up a new handle for him, and hope that my one doesn't catch on fire. But I didn't charge him anything for it. I just told him to give me free coffee for for a month, and they were happy with that. So that was my payment. But yeah, my biggest project has been a couple of giant 3.2 meter wide, or long even. Wide would be really big.
Yeah, that changes things.
But 3.2 meter long dining tables, or I don't know, tables anyway. Conference-y things. And yeah, these have been, like, it's a really simple design. And it's going pretty well, but because it's 3.2 meters, the capacities are just that much too big for most of my machines. So I'm having to jerry rig carts and outriggers, and instead of just holding it up against the fence of my panel saw to cross cut it, I'm having to clamp it in place so the dolly that I've had to rig up as an outrigger doesn't drag it away. And just a lot of annoying steps which are taking time and making me scratch my head. And just not frustrating, but certainly not enjoyable.
I find on jobs that big, I end up going back to hand tools a lot, like hand power tools, like skill saws to like cut things to length and stuff, because nothing fits.
I was so close to just taking the wobbly Makita track saw to cut the ends and stuff, but I want the accuracy of the panel saw. But being alone with this sort of length, like these are 3.2 meter long by 900 mil wide tabletops, and there's two of them, so I have no space left around the place anyway, so I'm having to stack them on top of each other when I'm storing it. And it's just me in here, so it's
for those of you
and sliding it over. And
for those of you who don't follow Jordan on Instagram, he put up a video. When was it? A couple of days ago, Jordan?
Yesterday, maybe.
Where he's putting it through his gigantic drum sander, the tabletop, and then you just see the tabletop come into frame on this dolly, and basically having to do the milling.
It's too big for the frame.
Continually, you've got to keep it on the dolly basically all the time. It's just too heavy to pick up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm able to slide it off the dolly and onto benches and that sort of stuff. But I did have a look at my dolly today because I thought, that's got a bit of a lean on it after leaving it overnight. And I've noticed I only tack welded the uprights, not fully seamed. So yeah, I was lucky to get away with that. So I've rectified the tack welds. I feel like there's been a lot going on this week, but it doesn't sound like a lot to report. And I think it's because it's just been a lot of head scratching and
Are those tables going to fit in your spray area?
No. So, that leads me on to something. These tables, the stock I had quoted for was 175 wide boards and 50 mil thick, and way bigger than what I could actually get. So I had to end up getting 38 mil thick boards, which is fine because my original tabletop was 40. So it's only a 2 mil difference in the end product. And also only 100 mil wide. I couldn't get 175s or 150s. So there's been a lot more work involved than I had originally planned, but I did save a lot of money on the actual cost of stock. So with that... Sorry?
Be more stable with the thinner boards, at least.
Yeah, exactly. And because they are breadboard and it's all quarter sawn as well, I'm not against using the thinner boards. It's added, instead of doing it in 2 glue ups per tabletop, I did it in 3, and I didn't face joint anything before I glued up the tabletops. I only edge jointed because they were such straight boards anyway. And that meant I can flatten the top through the wide belt sander, and then on the bottom, if there's a few low spots, it doesn't matter. It's on the bottom as long as the edges are flat. But that brings me on to, I'm not spraying these. I'm using a new product, which is that Rubio Monocoat, which is crazy expensive. I didn't realize how expensive it was when I kind of was saying that I'll finish it in this oil. But, I got 1.3 liters of the clear, and I think it was 350 mil of the black, because the base is getting black stain on the legs. And that cost $400.
Sure.
Or not even 2 liters of oil. So it's super expensive. But apparently you get 50 meters of coverage per liter, so it should last me a while.
50-meter
square meters.
Okay, yeah.
There's been other stuff going on. I just can't remember. It's just stuff in and out. A lot of in and out jobs. So yeah. What about you, Robin?
We're going to get back to the tables shortly in the episode anyway. So if you think of more, then we can get onto it. So for me, I've just been working on my bathroom renovation. It's been pretty slow going, a lot slower than I'd wanted it to, but that's only because everything I'm doing I've never done before. And it seems like there's so many ways to attack something like this. So every time you go online, you hear one builder, who knows how qualified he is, one builder saying it has to be done this way. And then another builder says, no, it has to be done this way. And each one is equally the only way forward. Joey, we've talked in the past about when the tiling and the tub gets done. And through all of those conversations, I've got myself to a point now where I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck because I can't move forward. And this was in relation to the waterproofing before the tiling goes on. And I was like, what do I do? And then you do a little bit of research, and then you hear of some builders, they install the tub, then waterproof, then tile. Now, I remember you saying the bathtub goes in last because that's your fixture, and fixtures go in last.
Pretty much, yeah.
So
it covers all the nasty edges.
Yeah. So I think what it's come down to is, I think it's one of those things where you've got to read the situation, and like in my case, I need to install the bath first, basically, because I'm creating a little shelf on the side of the bath that sort of hangs over the lip of the bath as if you were inserting the bath into a stud. You know, you create that notch. I'm building a shelf in that sort of manner. It's just a 90 mil shelf. So I need to have that built first. Or I need to have the tub in, then build that over the tub. Then what? So yeah, anyway, it's one step forward and then about 4 hours of just standing in there going, what's the best way to go forward here? So I've got the sheets.
I was going to say, I know that it's super not kosher to say, but at least as far as I know, your work you're doing is not consented through your council. Is that correct? You don't have a building permit necessarily to do what you're doing. You don't have to, or I don't want to ask, do you have to? But I'm asking, you don't have one, right?
You do have to. I didn't know about that. I don't.
So the bonus is because the council are not coming to inspect it, it doesn't matter what the hell you do. It's your house. And I'm confident of my own ability, but at the same time, I also don't want to stick myself into a corner where, even though it's my own house, I can't move forward. I'm only going to stuff things up. While that is the one nice thing, is there's no one's real. It's not like I'm spending money on the labor here. It's just I can take as long as I want. My biggest fear is that I liquid nail something down to the floor, and I'm like, I shouldn't have done that, and now I'm stuffed, tearing it up.
Like for example, today I was that little opening to do the plumbing for the bath. I did all the sheeting around the bath, and I had that last panel which I left to the end because I thought this is where I'm gonna have the access panel for the plumber, and I cut it, and I was like, this looks great, and whack whack whack. And I just put in 4 nails into it, and I was like, crap, now I've got to pull the thing off. Just momentary lapse, and that's what I say. That's why everything takes so long. So I've got all the sheeting down on the floor, those anchors, those nylon anchors, perfect. Spot on. They work really well. I've got the sheeting on the bath and all of the tile area. And that's pretty much what I've done for an entire week.
All right.
On the weekend, the electrician's coming in to put in all the new electrics. I'll probably be getting the bath in this weekend, and then looking to start waterproofing next week.
Right, cool.
Yeah.
Learning lots then.
Yeah, slowly but surely getting there. It's a lot of fun, but I'm looking forward to this being done because it's slowly starting to cool down here a little bit, and the outdoor cold showers are becoming a bit much. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about some of the failures we've had in the past. So ideally, we want to be talking about catastrophic failures, whether that's on a big or small scale. That's up to the other two. But yeah, the idea is we want to talk about the failures that we've had, why it failed, and what we've learned. So the idea is if you are listening to this and you're about to start a similar project, hopefully you can learn from our mistakes. So I thought what I'd do is I'd start off with one, and then we can go from there. The one that this project is what inspired me to pick this topic for the episode. I did a wooden bird bath when I was living back in Adelaide, and I made this wooden bird bath just out of bog standard pine. I think some of the bottom parts of the bottom parts of the leg were treated, but only parts of it. And I dug a hole, and this basically got stuck in the ground with a plastic flower pot tray for the water. And it was great. It worked well. Super cool project. Someone I've got this up on YouTube, so you can go in and search it up. Someone in the comments said, "What about termites?" And I remember at the time I was just like, like termite damage is it just seems so remote. What are the chances? And I remember saying to this guy, and I need to go back and follow up on the comment, because I said to him, it's probably going to be fine. If this ever falls apart, I'll let you know. And I never did. It was about 3 months, and I woke up one morning, this thing was falling over, and termites had got straight 3 months. I mean, they found this. Now, obviously, it was just the juiciest, softest, easy to eat pine.
Yeah, pine's delicious.
So I imagine they came from far and wide at this bonanza. But I couldn't believe it took 3 months, and it was destroyed.
Wow, that's funny.
Where I grew up, so I grew up in the Pilbara. I think if you had a length of pine and you left it outside for an hour, you'd already start seeing these little mounds forming around the ground. It's crazy how quick they come. The pine's good. I mean, it tastes good, smells good. I love it.
So ever since then, I've been so paranoid about termites.
Are they everywhere in Australia? Essentially, is there any places where usually you don't get termites, or?
I don't know. Everywhere I've been has termites. So, in my experience, they're everywhere, but I haven't been everywhere, obviously. So, not sure.
Right.
I know where I am here in Townsville. I'm quite close to the what's called Castle Hill. It's like the main hill of the close to the city. And the building inspectors who've looked at this house have said on that hill, it's just like the hill is like 50% termites. So if you're living in the area,
it's essentially a giant mound.
It's essentially a giant termite mound. So if you're living in the area, be super careful, because they are here and they will go through your house. They've actually the timber that I'm using on my on the framing that I've done upstairs, your treated or your structural pine, you've either got the bare pine, which is untreated. You've then got that bluey greeny color. Up here they have a red tint to it.
Yep.
And that's for a specific type of termite that you get up north, mostly up near Darwin, which is just like this termite on steroids that'll just tear through that blue pine. So
it must be a Texan termite, according to the comments.
According to Jeff, yeah. So they make like a special treatment up here, because up in the north of Australia, it's even worse. So
geez. Wow. But man, living in New Zealand, we have nothing that really does anything to anyone. So
do you guys
have to think about
European house borer over in
Queensland?
Yes, that's probably the worst.
We do have borer, and really the only thing it does is get into nice old bits of furniture. But
Yeah.
in the older houses, in the old villas, which what we call them villas, I think you would call them. What do you call those? What do you say?
Townhouses?
You know the old Australian houses with the deck that goes all the way around.
Oh, with the bullnose and all that.
Queenslander things.
Queenslander.
Yeah. So our version would be a villa, which is pretty much the same time period. Ours is slightly more Victorian, more decoration. But usually those old buildings are full of bore in the joists because they usually carry or remu, and they like to get eaten. So.
Talking about that, there's a show called what is it? It's one of these home renovation shows, Grand Designs, and they've got a Kiwi version. And it's this blue Victorian, well, it was a white Victorian house. They moved it up into the mountains and painted it blue. I don't know if you've ever watched the show.
Yeah, I have. I can't think of that one though.
Oh man, it was what you're talking about, an old Victorian timber.
Right. Yeah. Villa. Yeah.
Beautiful. Anyway, so that was
they're very nice buildings. Yeah.
Sorry, that was my discovery into termites, and
wow.
Yeah. Take them serious, folks. They are, especially if you're in Australia. And I need to go find that comment from whoever left that and say, yeah, you were right. Cool. So, Joey, how about you? Any?
I was trying to think about this all day.
Joey doesn't make mistakes.
That's what I wanted to say is that I make mistakes, 10 times a day, but I can't think of one that I've made which is so bad that project has to be scrapped. The only thing I can think of is if I made a mistake on the first step of a project, then that's liable for me to say, right, that's it, throwing it in the bin and walking away from it, unless it's a client job, obviously. But once you're 10 steps into something and you make a mistake, you just have to find a way to fix it. And if that means remilling up or buying a new piece of timber to try and match in, then that's what you have to do. But so on the extension table I just built, I went to put a final coat of finish on, and something went a bit haywire, and it just didn't feel smooth enough. And I thought, okay, I'll rub it down and put another coat on. And I wanted to use like 1,000 grit sandpaper just to take the little dust nubs off the finish. And I'd run out of 1,000 grit. So I went to my neighbor, who's a panel beater, and asked for some sandpaper. He gave me some wet dry stuff. So I thought, oh sweet, I'll rub it down wet. And usually when I've done that, it makes a really nice finish. Well, in this case, rubbing the water onto that finish, it raised the grain on the oak really badly suddenly, which I was really surprised on.
You used an oil-based poly, didn't you?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, it was an oil-based poly. Yeah, that's what I was really surprised. And so I ended up, what did I do? I ended up having to sand it back again and pretty much start from scratch on the top. I did probably a coat less than I usually would. So that table ended up getting like 7 coats, and kind of half of them were sanded off again. That
was just the top, right? It wasn't all the parts.
Yeah, only the top. Yeah, only the very top. See, the base I finished 3 coats, bam, finished, and it feels like glass. And I was like, oh, if the top's going to be that easy, that's going to be mint. But ended up being there like a Sunday night trying to get the last coat on Monday. The delivery was like Monday morning, and I'm like, holy crap, I've got like 8 hours to get this thing.
That's pretty tight Sunday night. Jeez.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was a recent kind of fail. The other thing I'm working on, since I've had this break of work, I've been working on my own desk for the house here. And I dreamed this idea up quite a while ago, and I talked to both of you guys about this, off air, about a detail about edging. I'm going to be hard to explain this, but I'm essentially going to have a large box, 2 meters tall, that the doors are all mitered around the corners.
Ah, yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
So there's no square end panels showing. It's just a mitered box, and it opens up to be the desk. Well, I started cutting all these pieces. I've got the main body of it made, and I bought special hinges and special down flap stays for the desk lid that's going to flap down, become my desk. And because it's mitered on the outside edges, there's no way this thing is just going to pivot down on a hinge. Like, I don't know if it even makes sense when you're just thinking about it, but when you actually get a piece of wood with a miter on it and try and pivot it down, the little corners on the miters bind really badly on the other miters, the vertical miters, and it just does not work. So I spent like $60 on hardware that had to go straight in the bin.
Surely they'd make a special hinge for that, though. It would need to be a special, obviously internal.
You ever seen that?
Because I'm thinking of, in kitchen units where you've got the corner door, and you've got that sort of wraparound hinge. Would that be sort of where you're going with it?
The problem is that generally with a desk, you want the desk to end up flush with the shelf that's inside the desk unit. Mm-hmm. And with the kitchen hinge that is, say, 155-degree kitchen hinge is going to end up either being way lower or higher than the desk. They're not designed to end up being flush.
Yeah, okay.
But that is essentially what you need: a lift out and away, and then pivot. One of the bigger problems is I've gone and drilled all these big bloody holes in my panels to hold these special hinges, which take like a 26 mil hole. So that's all filled with black bog, which is awesome looking, but I can't do anything about it now.
So these weren't test pieces. These were the wood.
I did a whole lot of test pieces, but I didn't have a miter on my test piece. I was just testing where the stay had to be and how the hinge worked. And then I was like, sweet, this is all going to work. Put it onto the actual piece and did all the drillings and everything. All the holes were drilled. And I went to fit it. It's on camera, so you'll see me go, oh, shit, this isn't going to work.
So you're filming this one as well?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I thought this might have been
it's going to be it's more like a brainstorm in video format. Like, I'm just going for it. Like, I've got a drawing of this, but I'm really just making it up on the fly. And that is part of the problem, even though I've thought about it a lot. There's some little details that just aren't happening. So what I've ended up doing is because I wanted to make a lot of this with pieces I had in the workshop, just whatever I had, as much as I could lying around. So I've ended up using some Blum lift up stays and turned them upside down and put them in the wrong corners, and it actually works well for a drop down, and it does exactly what I need to. It pushes the door out away from the mitered corners and brings me flush. It leaves a 20 mil gap between the desk and the shelf unit, so I'll lose pens down there all the time, but whatever. And so then there was a whole new issue about making it actually stay. The stays I bought weren't going to work because of the pivot positions and all sorts of bloody technical stuff. It just wasn't going to work. So I've still got some problems to work out with how it's actually going to work, because at the moment it flaps down, but it doesn't stay there. If I let go, it's just going to rip off. So still in the process of working out this failure.
I'm super excited to see this video now.
Yeah, me too.
Because I think a lot of your videos, Joey, they are always like on point. This is what I'm doing. I did this mistake, but because I've been doing this for so many years, I totally got over it. So it's going to be interesting to see you actually trying to work things out as you go.
Yeah. I've been trying to keep the camera on as much as I can I've just had the camera running while I'm just standing there like swearing at this thing. So,
Shop words.
yeah. So and to carry on with more failure for the same thing, you may have seen on my Instagram, I bought these awesome curly walnut veneers, which I was meant to veneer my dining table with when it was like Mark II, like way original version.
This is that round table you did the video for on YouTube.
Yeah. So I had no intention of veneering that design. I had several other designs which were going to be veneered with this walnut. So I've had it sitting there. So what I'm going to do is veneer the whole face of my desk. So when you're sitting in my lounge, you just see this awesome, crazy walnut burl. It's going to look awesome. So I cut it and fixed it together with tape. So today I pressed it onto the sheets of plywood, which will be the doors of my desk. And as per usual, after 2 hours, I took it out of the press. And within 5 minutes of taking these pieces out of the press, we've got these crazy big ripples in the veneer. And I think the problem is I don't think I put too much glue on. There is a fine line between too much glue and not enough glue when it comes to veneering.
Yeah.
I just assumed you just do it like you're doing solid timber because it's such a thick veneer.
The veneer is only 0.5 thick or something.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was a sort of, what do you get? You get up to like 2, 3, maybe 5 mil veneer. I thought it was a solid one.
If you're lucky, you can't find that anymore.
That's usually shop-made veneer. Where you
veneer. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
What glue were you using? Was it just PVA?
I just use a cold press PVA.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I've used it heaps before. Sometimes you do get bleed through where the glue pushes right through the veneers.
Right.
Ideally, you don't want that because you end up with glue on the face of your panel, but usually it's in small spots and you can kind of work with it. I obviously did end up thinking about it now, I obviously did put too much glue on because I had a lot of squeeze through on this veneer. And I think after the 2 hours in the press, it just wasn't enough. And so taking out of the press allowed the moisture in the glue to expand the veneer, and it's kind of bubbled off the panels. So I'm crossing my fingers that as it dries out, it's going to flatten out. It was seeming to do that as I left the workshop this afternoon. So I'm hoping I'll go to the workshop tomorrow and they're going to be flat. If they're not, that's like $700 worth of veneer.
I was going to ask, is there a plan B, or like if it's not flat?
Not really.
Game over.
I mean, if it was a client's job, I would scrap it. But I could probably live with a couple of ripples. What's that?
Macrame or something? What's it called? Where you do little cuts outs of veneer. It's not macrame. That's something.
Marquetry.
Marquetry. That's the word I was looking for. Do some marquetry.
What's macrame?
I have no idea. I think it's a sewing term. I don't know.
Macrame is like when you weave kind of string into plant holders and stuff.
Yeah. That would be very interesting. Well, a bit of a waste of a veneer, but very interesting.
I was close to the right term. Come on.
Anyway, so I'm in the middle of failing big time on my desk.
Cool. I mean, not cool. I mean, it sucks for you. It's a good story. Cool. I mean, I guess I've got a finishing failure too, which came on a very large slab table, which was, I don't know, some people would consider it about a $10,000 slab, even though it's not worth that much, but some people think they are, where I used that Envirotex epoxy for the first time. So that's it's a finish where you pour it on and then it's self-leveling and it degasses and you go over it with a blowtorch and it gets rid of the bubbles, and it's a high gloss finish. So the first time I was using it, I didn't do a sample piece because I thought, I'm good enough. I don't need to test this. For, what is it, like $200 for the bottle, which was just enough to finish that slab. And the thing is, my first time doing it was perfect. It came out really nicely. but it's high gloss, and I didn't want the high gloss finish. So what I ended up doing was I sanded it lightly with, I think it was like 400 grit maybe, and just to scruff up the surface.
Yeah.
And then everything I read had told me that my Sherwin-Williams lacquer would be able to go straight over the top of it, and it wouldn't have any bonding issues, and it'll be sweet. You just spray it like usual, let it dry, and you've got your matte finish. And I should say the reason why I did the pour over epoxy was there was a slight dip in the slab right in the middle of the table where the saw blade had kind of deflected, and I didn't want to lose it. That's why I went down this route. So I did that, and I sprayed it, and then I started seeing these little bubbles come up, or like when you get that orange peely effect, or if you're spray painting a car and you have a bit of grease and the oil comes through the paint layer, kind of looked like that. So I thought, oh, no worries, I'll just sand that little bit over and then I'll do another coat of lacquer. Well, when I sanded that bit, that small section, which was probably about a 10 cent coin size, was now about a small dinner plate. So I thought, nothing have cured, right? So I waited a few days and I sanded it back, and I did the same thing, and then that section was gone, which was great. But then on the other end of the table, there was a bigger section of the same issue.
Jeez.
So I'll chase myself back and forth, and then whatever led to it, I checked it, and I realized that the epoxy in that sections where it was bubbling was really soft, whereas the rest of the tabletop was really hard. So I thought, must be a mixing issue. And this is going to be an $8,000 table when it's all said and done. So I didn't care if I had to spend another $200 on epoxy to get it done right, because this time nothing can possibly go wrong. I know what I did wrong. I didn't mix it properly. I mixed it in too big a sample. So I stripped it off, which took about a day and a half, because the slab is 1.2 meters wide. So it's wider than my belt sander. So I had to do it all on the stroke sander and palm sander. So I stripped that off. I did the pour again. And this time I thought, I'm not going to let the mixing of this crap get in my way. So I put the stir stick on the drill for paint, and I mixed it up really well. And I thought, this is great, because all these bubbles were like flying around me. I was doing all this epoxy. And I put that on the slab, and it all went on really well. I blowtorched it. Heaps of air came out of it. It was looking really nice. And then the next day when I came back to check how it all cured, there was millions and millions of micro bubbles throughout the entire finish, because it was obviously overmixed.
So when you say overmixed, is that because it was agitated through the spinning?
Yeah, so the finish itself is self-gassing, so it's meant to get rid of its own air bubbles. But it does specifically say in the instructions to stir with a flat blade, not to chop it up. So once again, it was my mess up. So I had to strip that one off, and then third time was the charm, and it went on really well the third time, but I did still lacquer spray because I wanted that matte finish, like I said, and I had the same issue again, where it had that little bit of orange peeling. So I just decided to say, stuff it. I stripped the lacquer off it. I put on a buffing wheel on my sander, on my car buff style thing, and I just buffed the entire surface. So something that should have been, 2 days work turned into about a fortnight by the time it was all said and done. And if I ever want a matte finish over Envirotex Light again, I'm just not going to do it, because it's just not worth it.
Yeah, that stuff is not particularly, though, is it?
No. So, I mean, that's probably my biggest failure when it comes to finishing a piece. And I've had Sorry?
Sorry, I was going to say I did a bar with that exact same product, and actually ended up using my neighbour's, the panel beater's spray booth over the weekend, so I could have a dust-free environment and could have a perfect setup. And even then, just did not I had a few air bubbles I couldn't get rid of, and I've since learned a couple of tricks about how to do it, but I'm still very reluctant to do pour-on finishes.
Yeah, I think the only way I would probably do it again is if I got it in a vacuum chamber before I poured it.
Yeah.
So I was guaranteed that there was no air introduced to the mix, and then it's only the wood degassing. That would
Yeah, that is the problem, is that you actually get oxygen coming out of the timber up through the epoxy.
Yeah.
And so
I didn't know that.
What Envirotex Light actually recommend you put a very thin layer on first, and to essentially seal the timber, and then you can sand that, and then do your heavy coat on top of that, and you should get no gas coming up through the timber.
And that's when you get that
pretty
glass.
good lesson.
Yeah, and I did read that prior to doing this as well, which probably would have helped, but oh well.
Yeah, I did the first time as well, and I was like, I don't need to do that, but you do.
Well, now would that gassing coming out of the timber, would that affect all finishes? The reason I ask is because a lot of the timber slabs that I've dried myself, which I'm never really sure if they're properly dried before I start using them, the first coat I've on so many occasions stuffed it up. Like the first coat of poly, it's just always slightly tacky. It's a screw up. I wait a couple of days, get some terps, wipe that off, and then the next coat's perfect. So it's almost like that first coat has then sealed that. Would that be the same type of thing?
In that situation, I would say that if you're using full strength out of the can polyurethane is probably the issue.
No, this is wipe on stuff, so it's thinned out.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably thin that even more for a sealing coat, because you really just want thinners in there in a very small amount of what do they call it? I can't remember. Hardness, something like that.
Resin.
Solids, that's what they call it.
No.
Solids which is the part you actually feel and touch. You just want a small amount of that for the sealing, and then you're just building up on that. So, I mean, it could be moisture not being able to evaporate through if they're not quite dry enough.
I would also think maybe it's going on a little bit too thick if that's the case for a first coat. Like, if you're going on really, really thin, then it shouldn't really be trapping any moisture in or any air in. It should just kind of flash off relatively quickly. But it's hard to say without actually seeing it in the flesh.
Yeah, because in all the subsequent coats, you put it on in a couple of hours, it's perfect.
Yeah.
First coat will take 2, and I would just always assumed it was the humidity here. But now listening to what you guys are saying, maybe it's something else.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge.
So you got there in the end, though, with the slab.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't stoked with the result, but it was good enough. And, it looked fine. It was just, to me, I knew there was a few little bits and few details in it which I could see because I was the one that did it, but no one else would be able to pick up on. So it was good enough, but certainly not the best.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, that's probably my biggest failure to date as far as not being able to rectify it after the first mess up. Because I mess up on, a very regular basis, like Joey said, probably 10 times a day. It's just the little things, or it's failure to plan something out. So instead of, doing something before, like what I'm working on right now, I should have cut mortises before I glued the leg assemblies together, because now it doesn't actually fit on my machine. If I had have planned it out and figured out that, this isn't going to work, well, what is now taking me basically a whole day to cut for 8 mortises is now taking, it should have taken an hour, but it took me an entire day. So it's just that sort of stuff happens often, but I can generally overcome it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't consider that a failure then.
No, it's not a failure.
Just problem solving in the shop.
Problem solving, exactly right.
Yeah.
It's just
one of the oldest failures that I have, and calling this a failure, this can't be fixed without taking the entire thing apart and redoing it. One of the first woodworking projects I did, I think it might have actually been the second thing I ever built. This was back in the day when I was getting all of my wood from pallets. So, it was whatever you had was what you used. And I made these 2 bedside tables stained at the same color as my bed. They were pretty rustic, but there was some decent joinery in there. And it just so happened that one of the pallets that I got had a few strips of some kind of hardwood. Now, I'm not sure what it was, but it was some kind of hardwood. The top, though, the rest of it was all pine. So I used these hardwood strips for the shelf, and then the top I used the junky pine. And over the years, and it took years, and I point this out because back in those days, when people talked about wood movements, I thought it's not can't be that big of a deal. Over the years, this the tops of both of these, the timbers shrunk, and you've just got these hairline cracks all the way through the top surfaces where it shrunk. But what's interesting is the bedded timber on the shelf still looks beautiful, like it's just been finished. And it's one of those, like, as I say, total failure. I need to take the whole thing apart. It's it's junk now because it's split. There's nothing I can do about it. But it's amazing how I look at that and I'm like, that's why people use hardwood over pine, because that hardwood stayed together amazingly, whereas the pine has just shrunk and split and shown its age.
Yeah. Cool.
Anything else?
There's so many things I could say, but they're little, and I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have a box I'm meant to be making. It's sitting in a pile with all its parts at the moment, and it's been like that for 6 months. And so if you remember, I made the cube box quite a while ago. I gave it away. It was like a veneered little trinket box thing. So my plan was to make like some kind of fancy box once a year and give it away through my YouTube channel. So I had this big smart plan to do like a jewelry box. So when you open the lid, the drawer at the bottom comes out at the same time. And when you shut the lid, the drawer retracts back into the unit. So you just have one lock for the lid, and that locks the drawer as well. And I came up with a mechanism to make it work, and it works, but it works kind of shit. and that is at the moment sitting on the fence whether or not it's going to be a failure. It's just I haven't come up with a solution yet, so it's still just in progress. And I'm not giving it any brain power, so it possibly is a failure. But
or is it just a throwing in the towel?
Yeah, it could be. Like the problem is I spent so much time. I've got a full scale prototype and then the real deal. And I've already veneered the inside of the box because I had to do that before I assembled it.
Yeah.
And I've got all these nice veneers to veneer it with. I just can't get the mechanism to work properly. And so I'm just kind of like, one day a solution will appear.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much the show then. Any other disasters that you guys have?
So apparently there's one going on outside because my neighbors are yelling crazy.
Oh,
they keep distracting me. I think they've got a sea container they're loading, so they're moving. So, all I keep hearing is this Pommy accent yelling out. So, sorry.
We had a question from Dirk during the show. Do you guys use the Craig Euro hinge jig? Now, is that the one for the Euro hinges, the 35 mil?
Never heard of it, so I couldn't. Obviously,
that is what hinges, but I don't know. I mean, so okay, on a very quick tangent is that all quote unquote Euro hinges are not made equal. So they have all different specifications based on the manufacturer. So,
oh right. I thought it was a standard shape and design and fit and everything.
almost all of them have a 35 millimeter hole, but it's that backset from the edge and the spacing of the drill holes for the screws or whatever type of fixings that kind of hinge has.
Yeah,
they're different, and so are the fixings and positions of the mounting brackets depending on brand and what you're trying to do with it. So having one jig to rule them all does not work. You need one jig per brand, ideally, to rule them all. So that's why my advice has always been pick a brand, buy the jig from that brand, because every hinge manufacturer has their own jigs, and stick with it. And then get to know those hinges really well, and then you'll be excellent at doing, using them.
So assuming then I'm assuming what Dirk is saying then is the Craig Euro hinge jig. What you're saying, Joey, is that Craig would have Euro style hinges for that jig.
Well, they should. I don't think Craig do. I think Craig are just trying to sell a little piece of plastic.
Yeah, because I've seen you use the Euro hinges in the past in your videos, but I don't think I've ever seen you use one of those. Or do you use them? That sort of that like plate that slides on and it's got the mounting holes for everything.
Yeah, I have a jig from Blum for Blum hinges. I have a supplier for Solis hinges, and they are almost identical, so I can use the same jig.
But you do use a jig, though. You don't just measure the...
No, because it's like I could just have a jig and go drill, done, or I'm not going to measure every little hole. So
yeah. I use them so rarely that generally I will make my own little jig. Like I'll take the measurements and I'll transfer it and I'll make a little MDF template, and then I can just use that. So I'll install like 10 hinges in a year. So I'll that style of hinge in a year. So I very rarely use them. But now that I have a laser, I could probably just cut my acrylic templates.
Yep, that would be the way to do it.
Yeah.
We can have a periodic furniture studio Euro hinge jig.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mouthful. You're going to need to make sure the box is big to get all that on.
$79.95.
Cool.
Bye.
All right. Well, that's pretty much the show then, everyone. I just want to take this opportunity to everyone who's still listening in the chat, the 15 of you who are still in there. Just a reminder that we are going to be down in Brisbane on May the 5th, and we're going to be doing a meetup. There are Facebook details, which I will have in the video description shortly to the event. We'd love to see you all there, as many of you as possible. So if you're in the Brisbane area, come say hi. We will also be doing a talk at the Marlini Wood Expo on that Saturday, the 5th of May. So if you are going to the expo, 12:30, we'll be in the main stage doing a talk. It would be great to see some familiar faces in the tent. But other than that, that's pretty much the show. Joey, Jordan, anything else you want to add before we head off?
No, nothing from me.
No, I'm good.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thank you very much to everyone in the chat, as always. We had a lot of good chat tonight. Jeez, you guys went to town, so thanks for being part of it. And we'll see you guys again same time Thursday next week.
Gotcha.
See ya.